Assalamu alaikum everyone from beautiful Zamboanga City here in the southern Philippines. Today I wanted to actually reply to an Instagram story by Simonsayssquat, and he's part of the Muhajir Mode team, I believe, of which I also participate. And I am actually, you wouldn't know, I mean, based on the one comment that I left on the video that he posted, you might get the wrong idea and think that I am not as like a pro-Hijra of a person as I am. I actually am a pro-Hijra person, but Hijra has to be for the sake of Allah. Hijra can be for a lady or it can be for money, but it's supposed to be for the sake of God. That you emigrate from a place that is not worshiping God, not worshiping Allah alone, to a place where you can do that freely. And there are different ways that we can look at that now. So this is a reply to his post because he said, and interestingly enough, I mean, this is basically the things I used to think as well. Isn't it interesting how many Muslim people are migrating to the West, and you see a lot of like Western Muslims that want to, or converts I should say, that want to emigrate to Muslim countries. And he asked, like, why is that? Well, I think a good thing to keep in mind for those people who are coming to the West is that it's the land of opportunity for economics, number one. And number two, the places that they're leaving behind aren't necessarily, the most Islamic of places. In fact, I remember, and it's hard to wrap this up in a comment, so I didn't go into depth or detail when I was writing, but I remember back in 2005, when I was just a brand new Muslim, and I spoke with a brother who had just emigrated from Tunisia, and he was in Minneapolis at that time. And he told me at that time that if you were to pray Fajr, the morning prayer, in the masjid, twice in a row, that the secret police of Tunisia would investigate you and your family. So I think that it's important, especially for us as converts, to remember that just because somebody is coming from a Muslim country doesn't mean that they're even necessarily allowed to practice Islam, even in a normative way, in a normal way. Like praying in the mosque isn't extremism. Going there for the morning prayers is a good thing. You know, you're staying away from trouble. You're probably doing things A-OK, tip-top fashion, right? You're not like getting into trouble. So things that we kind of take for granted could potentially land people in prison in some Muslim countries. Also, a huge amount of the Muslim world right now is under the control of the American hegemony, like the superpower, right? So whether it's a monarchy or a dictatorship, a lot of people don't really have, that kind of control over their life. If they were to speak up and say, like, I don't necessarily support what my nation is doing in regards to Gaza, not helping, not saying anything, not even like giving airlifts or like airlifting food, let alone fighting, that could potentially land that person and their whole family and extended family into a serious situation, whether that's jail or brought to a black site where there's just no, kind of communication anymore for years, tortured or worse. So these are things that we kind of have to keep in mind. There is a trend also that's worth mentioning amongst the muhajirin, or the people who want to make hijrah for the sake of God, that there's a focus like on Dubai and like only really like wealthy nations. And of course, I mean, it's easier for us to go to those places, right, and establish ourselves because we can work there and actually survive. But are those places necessarily the best places to bring up our children, or are those places that are just convenient for us as Muslim converts? So Dubai for me is just another version of Florida. I mean, you have nightclubs there is prostitution there are people that hand out those cards with women for hire, that kind of stuff. So it's just a trash place to me. I would never consider Dubai as a place for hijrah, but that's neither here nor there. Well, actually it is here nor there. And on the other hand, we do have places like Afghanistan that have just basically repelled successfully, like in the last year or so, or in the last 2 years, their occupying force. They kicked out the American army, right? They had a good deal, And then the deal seemed like it was going to not work out with, I think, the Biden administration. And then they forced it. They basically made sure that they got what they wanted, and what they wanted was the country, and they have sovereignty now. And the sovereignty that they have, they're trying to implement some form of God's laws on earth. Now, a lot of people really, it's easy to beat up on them, on the IEA, because when you look at the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, they are your stereotypical TV Muslim guys, right? They're wearing turbans, they have big beards, the women are completely covered, you don't see them in public all too often. Like, they're just easy targets, and that's really unfortunate. But the point of me bringing them up is that you don't find a lot of people who want to make Hijra going there. Now, is it easy to move there? Absolutely not. And you're actually probably putting yourself at a bit of a risk, because there are still remnants of other fighting groups there that are targeting Westerners. That said, you're putting yourself at a risk anywhere you go. And I would like to see, pardon, there's a loud vehicle coming by. I would like to see more people investing in that country, the country of Afghanistan, because it's a place that's been torn apart by war for what, like 45 years, something like that, for 45 years now. And now, of course, they're in the reconstruction era of their country, so why not help them out? These are some tough questions that I don't have answers to, but it would make sense. Now, it kind of comes to the point, so where are we supposed to go? I believe that if you can find yourself a good Muslim community where you can practice Islam freely, then you are in the right place. That could be the southern Philippines for you. That could be Indonesia or Malaysia or Brunei. I think for English, people who are English speakers, native English speakers, no matter what their background is, people that were born and raised in the West, I think that Southeast Asia, personally, is the place for them to be. Only because I feel like the cultures here are not, and they're very diverse. I mean, even Indonesia has like 700 languages, right? But I feel like the cultures here are not as foreign to us as maybe cultures that you would find in other parts of the Muslim world. And I would recommend Westerners who want to invest in the communities here, who have that ability to move for the sake of God, to move here and settle here and establish families here and communities here. One last point I wanted to mention in reply to Brother Simonsayssquat is that some people make Hijra quietly, again because of the situation that they're under. I mean, you will find, for example, Hui Muslims who live in Kazakhstan, and you will find Circassian Muslims, people that were genocided by Russia, who live in Jordan. And some people don't even have the ability to say that they are moving for the sake of Hijra, for the sake of Allah, because it could mean that their families face real consequences, their extended families face real consequences in their home country. So for example, like if somebody in, I don't know, like Egypt said, I want to escape the dictatorship of Sisi and make Hijra, and now they're living in, for example, Afghanistan, they're probably going to be put on a list and detained. Or even not, let's not have an extreme example like Afghanistan, because that's considered extreme, but let's say like they relocated to Indonesia and they called that Hijra, or Malaysia. That would mean that they, again, probably would be put on a list, and their families could be detained. They could be forced to come home. I mean, I think a lot of the converts don't really understand how vicious so-called Muslim governments are, then how far away from Islam they actually are. And that's something to bear in mind, guys, when discussing Hijra. It's a sensitive topic. In the end, do I agree with people necessarily relocating to the West from Muslim countries? I don't. I really, really don't, guys. I think that for their family's sake and for the sake of their sanity, I would recommend that they those people who want to emigrate from whatever country that they're in right now, from a Muslim country, they should try to find another similar cultured Muslim country that they can emigrate to. That could be to Turkey. It's not easy, right? Hijra is not easy. Moving anywhere is not easy, guys. Relocating anywhere is not easy. And the West does make it very easy. And there are perks. You get the citizenship, right? You're not going to get these things as well. But at the end of the day, if you're thinking about your religion and your family and worshiping God, then I would seriously, if I was a born Muslim person that wants to migrate, I would consider moving, again, maybe Southeast Asia or places where there are jobs, where you can get that opportunity. I met a lot of people who are not from Saudi Arabia. About 40% of the population there is not from Saudi Arabia, and they're living there. So anyways, guys, these are just my opinions. They are by no means, what would you say, authoritative, or something that you would maybe bank on completely, and something that you would obviously want to double check and see if they're accurate. But this has just been my experience. I've been living outside the United States for 13 years, guys, and my original intention 13 years ago was for Hijra to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia changed drastically. So then I tried Malaysia. I came back to Saudi Arabia more for work, to be honest with you, back in 2020. And now I'm here in a community that I feel like it's good for my family and I in the southern Philippines. So anyways, y'all, take care and talk to you again. Bye-bye. Assalamu alaikum.